right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, we are talking about Flamin' Hot, which is the fourth this year of these weird but fun brand true stories. Except this one's not really super true, but that doesn't matter because it's a fun time anyway. And joining me to talk about it is my buddy Q, David Quinones from the Why Are We Like This podcast right here on the All Points West network. So we have a great fun conversation coming up, lots of great puzzle pieces to get into. So that's coming up here in a second. Before we get to it, though, I do got to remind you, as always, to make sure you're subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. And if you really like the show, you can rate and review us over on Apple Podcasts or Good Pods or Spotify. 5 stars would be nice, but, just drop a little rating or review. It helps make sure that new people get to check out the show, and that's what we want to keep making happen. Also, you can follow me on social media at PiecingPod and join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. And with that said, let's get to Flamin' Hot. I like your little sign in the back there for Why Are We Like This.
I know that you have millions of listeners, and I want to siphon them off.
Yeah.
I should be doing that move that all network operators do, which is like kind of like forcing myself on your feed and pushing
feed drops.
Yeah, feed drops, like pushing things out.
You gonna do a little feed drop on me?
Feed drop, and all of a sudden you're like, what the hell? What happened?
All these movie fans are like, but I like Florida. It's a really nice place.
Yeah, I imagine a lot of your fans are like, well, I mean, yeah, if you have a problem with freedom, I guess you wouldn't like Florida. I imagine that there's a healthy contingent of pit listeners that are in that camp, firmly in that camp.
Oh, yeah. Q's back with us, and we're going to talk about Flamin' Hot. How's it going, Q?
It's going great. Can you do me a favor? Let me know if my chair is too loud, because I can't keep myself contained. Wait, I thought we were supposed to be talking about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Oh, yeah. No. You missed out on that one, I'm sorry to say. Ooh. But, maybe for the third one, we'll get you back on for that. We'll see. No, you're excited to talk about this one. You messaged me about how much you like this movie.
Yeah, you asked me if I could be your token Latino to come on and talk. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, sure. I'd be glad to, even though, Mexico and LA are thousands of miles away from Puerto Rico.
I'm basically Tony Shaloub here.
Which Puerto Rico, which I'm not from. I'm from New York, but sure, man, I'm here for you.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to have you back. It's been a while since you've been on the show. Were you looking forward to this story being told? Because I mean, and not as a Latino, just as a fan of interesting stories.
Not at all.
Did you think that this
was not
could make
on my
a good
radar
movie?
at all. This was not the vast majority, and I want to like later on. I want you to try to rank at the end of this. I want you to help me try to rank all the quality of these product movies that were in and have a little conversation. I don't know how much you guys have talked about that on the air episode or whatever, but no, this was not on my radar. This was like one of those things where you hear about it, somebody mentions it, and you're like, oh, that sounds like it's definitely going to be a movie or whatever.
Right.
No, it was not on my radar until it was recommended to me by somebody who has a kid the same age as me, the same age that I have. And said, oh no, it'll be great, and is also a Hispanic person who's like, no, I know it sounds corny, I know it sounds like a cheesy movie, and it is to some degree, but like, you guys should watch this. And that person was right. I'm glad we did.
Yeah, absolutely. I think before we get into puzzle pieces, we should talk about the two main criticisms of this movie really quick. The first one, basically being that, it's corny and cliched and kind of TV show-ish in the way that it's put together, but I think that this movie knows exactly what it is, and I really don't think that that's a problem.
I agree with you. I don't have a problem with that's not one of my chief criticisms of the movie, which I have some. I have quite a few criticisms of this movie. But it's kind of earnest cornball nature. Like, I feel like maybe we're just not used to it anymore, but like we used to make a lot of movies like that. We used to make a lot of family movies. We always talk whenever you and I talk on this podcast, we talk about dying or dead genres. And this is one of those sort of dead genres, right? Where it's like the family movie that is live action, that's not IP based, that is like just a story that is fit for, everyone like age 8 to 100, and And
Sure.
so I forgive it for that. And and the thing that started our conversation over chat about this movie was me telling you, like, I'm paraphrasing myself a little bit, but basically, like, if we judge movies based on the thing that they're trying to be and how successful they are in being the thing that they're trying to be, like, what's a more successful
Right.
movie this year than this movie? It nailed
Right.
that feel good family drama, vibe, and it did it very well. It made me laugh a few times. It was, it was, a little cringy in some points, especially, like, I know Eva Longoria loves this Spanglish shit. She loves like making people think that that's the way that Latinos talk, that we just throw random palabras in the middle of our sentences and shit in Spanish. Like, that's how we talk. That's showing.
To be
how
fair,
Latino
when
we
you
are.
were drunk back in the day, you did do that quite a bit. Like at
I would do that when I was
Roberto's and
ordering
stuff like
Roberto's
that.
Taco Shop. That was a very specific use case, Dave, and it worked for both of us. We got better service because of that. Okay, that was a pragmatic decision. It was a business decision.
Of course. Well, the other chief criticism of this movie is the fact that it's bullshit.
Yes.
The story did not happen the way that it's presented here. And again, just like that first criticism, I think that this movie is just setting out to tell a fun, inspirational story regardless of the truth of it. And so, again, like, yeah, it's bullshit, but does it matter?
I think so. And here's why. And here, that not in the, when you read the article about it, or when you read a lot of the sort of contemporaneous reporting about it, and then also about the production of the movie, you'll hear that Eva Longoria was the director of this movie. Eva Longoria, many people know from, Desperate Housewives and just being like Miss It in the 2000s. I think a lot of her, like the way that she would bat away that criticism is that the scenes that were less accurate, or the plots that were less accurate, she said, and this is kind of bullshit, but she would say, well, that's the way it should have been. That's the way that it honors his story. And like, specifically, I'm thinking about the stand up and clap, the sort of, little hint to my first puzzle piece, the Norma Rae scene that people say, didn't happen. That is, like, abjectly did not happen. Him standing on the table, organizing the labor, and, getting everybody behind. That didn't happen. But whatever. I don't care about that. What I care more about is it in relation to reality, in terms of, like, what Disney and Hulu are trying to say, and what they very pointedly and specifically won't say. The things that they'll come up to the edge of the cliff of saying, and what that character, probably a real life version of that character in that moment, would have done, which is, like, organize his fellow workers. Like, why don't we unionize? I think that this is all ironic because, like, Frito-Lay actually did have an enormous strike. They had to go on strike in 2021. So a lot of this stuff is apocryphal. It didn't happen the way that it happened. I just wanted to, I pulled this from USA Today's article fact checking this, where it said their response that they got from Frito-Lay, because don't forget, this is a fucking commercial. This is a a 90-minute or 2-hour commercial. And this is a quote from Frito-Lay. This was their statement. Montanez's story, that's Richard Montanez, the main character of this movie. His story, told from his point of view, that's what this movie is. His contributions to Frito-Lay are highlighted throughout the film, specifically his insights and ideas on how to better serve Hispanic consumers and engage the Hispanic community. A legacy PepsiCo continues today. We're grateful to him for that and hope people enjoy the film. And you know what? That's letting Frito-Lay off the hook a little bit, because we'll get into the criticism a little bit more. But I overall, I walked away from this movie with some questions about the way that it's presenting the idea of brown capitalism. And we can get into it a little bit more, but all in all, if you're listening out there and you're trying to decide to watch it, like, don't let me, a crusty, cynical person, stop you from watching this with your kid. I had a great time. Watched it with my daughter. It's a bilingual movie, so it was great for us. It was a little Disney-fied in the messaging, but overall, it was a fun family movie that you don't see many movies like this anymore.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But with that, let's start getting into some puzzle pieces. What do you have for your first one?
My first one I kind of alluded to a moment ago, which is 1979's Norma Rae.
Sure.
Directed by Martin Ritt, starring Sally Field, Beau Bridges, Barbara Baxley. I wanted to highlight this movie because it kind of shows the importance of, like, the working class coming together to preserve their way of life in the face of globalization. So it has a lot in common with that, and there is a very specific Norma Rae moment, right? The proud worker who is, busting his ass and has gotten the short end of the stick his whole life, standing up and addressing directly other people in the same situation, knocking down those walls that that sort of our individualistic society built for us, where we like don't worry about the person, our fellow worker, our fellow class participants. We don't think about them that much, and we need somebody to stand up and say, hey, nothing happens here without us and without our hard work. And I thought, again, going back to like that criticism I have, they come right up to the edge, and you can never have a Disney movie that's going to say words like, solidarity or union or organize or anything, which is really what those people should have done. That is what Norma Rae, and the real life version of Norma Rae, Crystal Lee Sutton, who was a real person, a union organizer in North Carolina, did. And whereas in 1975, she organized that union and got shit canned in 1979 on some bullshit insubordination allegations, Richard Montanez went the different way, which I think shows how well capitalism and the corporate world has sharpened its weaponry to take a guy like him or a person like Crystal Lee Sutton, and instead of turn them into an enemy, kind of absorb them into the Borg and be like, oh no, now you're management too. How's that feel?
Yeah.
So,
and the way Tony Shaloub like kind of delivers his lines, like he makes himself out to be like a hero, but really he's doing it for his own interests.
Yeah,
like
presented as virtuous. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But there is a moment like when you go from the class of people who are the talent, who are the worker, who are the idea people, who make it happen. When you go from that to becoming, to getting absorbed into the people who are profiting just off of the work of those people, that's a big moment. And that's something that we, I think in our culture, in our cultural artifacts like movies and TV, we should examine more. And we don't. We kind of, especially more like latter day, we kind of wash over that. And it takes like really obscure movies like Sorry to Bother You, to address that. And then they're kind of innately or like inherently marginalized because it's like, oh, it's a black movie made by a musician, and it's kind of silly that it even got made. And more mainstream fare like this, you'll never see Disney greenlight a movie where you're talking about that tension of like, oh, well, now you're a parasite. How does that feel, Mr. Montanez? You hated those parasites forever, and now you're one of them. It's not the kind of thing I'm going to talk about with my daughter when she's 9, but like it's a tension that exists there, and it exists in our life.
Yeah.
How about you, Dave?
Yeah, let's go to my first one, which is an obvious one, but I think it's one that has to be in the conversation. There's barely a brand in food bigger than Frito-Lay, but McDonald's might be it. Okay. And the founder with Michael Keaton about the creation of the McDonald's brand and everything that went into creating that brand and spreading it, and just it like wildfire, just growing. I think, something we said when we were kind of messaging back and forth is about how like Air, for example, which the founder also came up during, has a lot more of like a nostalgic factor to it. But I actually kind of disagree with you. I think seeing these classic chip bags, the ones that we went out and bought with 50 cents or whatever back in the day, like there's a lot of nostalgia here. And the founder also captures that really well with just, all the classic McDonald's branding and the buildings and the way that the food came. And you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. And so there's a lot of nostalgia for food in both of these movies. And of course, it all being a big corporate commercial too, it fits in that way as well.
Well, it's funny because like there's something like more primordial happening in these movies too, where like I think of the Ray Kroc movie, and I think of this movie, and what I think of is like decay. I think of like degeneration. Mm-hmm. Go buy a McDonald's burger right now. I don't know when's the last time you ate one. But they're like, I know that this is hack. This is like a 1995 stand-up comic bit, but like the food sucks. Like, everything around us that we've been buying and that we're so nostalgic for and that we yearn for, not only has it sort of changed and we miss the trappings and the packaging and like the way that we felt when we were 30 years younger, but like we also miss it being good. Like everything fucking sucks now. Like everything,
and not just
tastes
good,
bad. It's made with worse stuff, and the things that we buy are all the shit that we buy is worse now. You throw it away, and again, I know this is like a hack George Carlin routine from like 1995, but it's true, and it's never been more true. And this like spate of movies that show this stuff, I think, only highlight it.
Yeah. No, but not just good, but also The packaging, the branding. Remember how much fun those like McDonald's buildings were and stuff like that? And now they look like condominiums or something.
Look
Like
terrible.
it's so weird the way that the corporate world is like kind of changed in that way. And I mean, obviously a million minds go into those decisions. They must think that it's going to raise their profits somehow, and it must work. I mean, I guess I
I've
don't
seen it at
know.
work, and I know exactly how it works with that's one thing that if anything happened in this part of the story where they talk about the creation of the seasoning, if any of it happened that way, that's a miracle to me.
Yeah.
Because the way that things happen now, I've worked inside of you know my work history. I've worked inside of large blue chip corporate organizations that develop that work in quick service restaurant and fast food and food packaging and things like that. I've worked in this world, and the way that these guys save face in their quarterly meetings and their annual shareholders reports is by, like, if you ever look at the way that they sell chicken or the way that they sell beef, there's like it's like credit ratings. There's like AAA Gold, AAA A minus, and it's like 1,000 tiers of quality of meat. And
Mm.
and the way that these guys drive the profit margin, Dave, is that over the course of 20 years, they go from AAA gold or diamond status burgers to buying like A minus. And
Mm.
slowly you as a consumer notice, man, this doesn't taste as good as it used to.
Yeah.
But up there in the corporate boardroom, they're like, you know how we did it, guys? We got 5% greater profit returns this year, and we did it by just being a little shittier with our meat.
A little
A
shittier.
little
Yeah.
shittier every year. Yeah.
You know who's still great? In-N-Out. But let's go to your next puzzle piece.
My next puzzle piece, I co-sign that. Wait, hang on. Dave, I don't even want to get off track on this, but Dave, did you know that there's like a big contingent of like In-N-Out skeptics who say that like In-N-Out's bad? There's like a
Yes.
strong vocal group of assholes.
It blows my mind, and I'll never understand it.
Incredible choices. I'm going to go for my next puzzle piece to the last time where a movie came out where we were all pretty sure that David O. Russell was still good, and that was 2015's Joy. Joy
Sure.
was the story of the domestic house worker, the mom, the woman who invented just like a new type of mop. Basically, it was starring Jennifer Lawrence and the titular Joy character, Robert De Niro, Bradley Cooper, all trying to run it back from what was the movie they were running it back from, Dave? From David
American Hustle.
American Hustle. No, well, not.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right, American Hustle. And this is a movie where we are presented with a deeply divergent representation of what actually happened.
Sure.
Where it was not the way things went down, where this character Joy isn't exactly the character that we're presented with in the movie, but nonetheless it does track with a person who ascends from this lower working class status, who's fighting against identity perceptions, in this case being like a woman in the 70s. It's like 70s and 80s, right, is when Joy is happening. And same time, sort of contemporaneous with this Mexican man who's being told to fuck off because he's an uneducated Mexican from Southern California who with a criminal record. This woman is a housewife. She's deemed what do you know, right? What do you know about corporate America? What do you know about product marketing? What do you know about building a business plan? And the rejoinder from both of these characters is not much, but I know about my life, and I know about my people, and I know about what their needs are, and somebody like me, our life. And again, two characters who, through their own dogged determination, their inventiveness, their belief in themselves, and the belief of the people around them in them, they're able to reach the ultimate prize, which is going from being a subject of capitalism to being an executive of capitalism, to being absorbed into that hive and into that Borg mind. And so that's my number two, Joy.
That's a
really
really good
movie. I think unfairly maligned.
Yeah, I saw it when it came out. I haven't seen it since then, but I remember it being pretty good. And that's a great piece, by the way. Like, I hadn't thought of that one, but that is a perfect example of just using that seed of the truth to tell an inspiring story that is just fun and a little bit for everybody, even if it's probably bullshit for the most part.
Which is a very old practice in this country that I'm going to get to with my last puzzle piece, sort of presaging that. But what about you, Dave? What do you got next?
All right, I'm going to talk about the food for a minute and go with Jon Favreau's Chef from 2014.
Okay.
So much good food on screen here. Not just, of course, the snacks and Frito-Lay food, but all the food at home, all the quesadillas and the
Yeah.
the burritos and yeah, I just wanted to like reach out and eat everything on the screen, and that's kind of the vibe that Jon Favreau gave us in Chef, a very different movie about very different things, but also about incredible food.
You were the fat little bully at the beginning, huh? That wanted to eat the bean and cheese burrito. Like,
Yeah.
give me that! I want that! Give me that burrito!
Did it not look great though?
It
was wrapped in the foil, and I mean, come on,
it's great.
Yeah.
Of course, it's like
Yeah.
there is an interesting story to be told about there's a million interesting stories to be told, and I guess this is kind of like what Eva Longoria is staking out. It's her creative play space of the rise, the ascension, and recognition of the Latino community as not just like, in a Cesar Chavez kind of union solidarity worker type of way, but in a more, hate to go back to the C word, but in a more capitalistic way. Like, we are also a market. We also have a way of doing things. And we for a long time, as a marginalized community, did those things at home. But hey, why the fuck aren't they on the shelves? Why isn't corporate America making these things? Why aren't they catering to us? We've got money. Shouldn't you be kissing our asses? Like, and there is, I think, some great stories to be told here, and that kind of gets to that.
And it should be like, stated that like, everybody loves that food.
Right,
it's not
it's not
like
just for Latinos. Yeah, exactly.
Everybody is super into that food. So yeah, it totally makes sense to cater to that market. But what do you have for your next piece?
My next piece is going back into the Q and Jewish Dave vaults, a movie that we saw together. I believe we saw this on a screener back before you were of any importance. Not a screener. What do you call it when you get to go early to a movie?
The press screening.
Press screening, yeah. We got to go see this. I don't know how. I guess it was through your role with Sony at the time. You were not a movie guy. You were a music guy at the time. You were not a recognized or celebrated podcaster. We did not in 2005 talk about podcasting as a thing. But nonetheless, 25-year-old me and you went and sat and spent a couple of hours enjoying the movie Lord of War, directed by Andrew Niccol and starring Nick Cage, Ethan Hawke, Jared Leto. And I want to mention, he's like the 10th listed person, but he makes the movie. Eamon Walker, who takes a star turn as, I forget what his character's name is, but he's supposed to be basically a version of Liberian dictator Charles Taylor. And has the titular line, Lord of War. He's like a star making, even though he didn't end up being a star making performance. So he has like 5 scenes where he comes in and he's incredible. So this was a movie that is based on it's an international crime drama focusing on the main character, Yuri Orlov, played by Nick Cage, a great Nick Cage performance, playing a Ukrainian American gun runner based on a real life guy by the name of Victor Arvan, I think was his name, or no, Victor Bao. And I picked this movie because it's lighthearted at times. It's a biopic that doesn't take itself too seriously and has fun with the details and kind of intentionally reimagines some of the key moments. It highlights the protagonist for whom this is life and death for them, but the stakes are actually incredibly low. Like, they make a point, if you read about the real life Victor Bao character, he was a big gun runner, but he wasn't by far like the only gun runner in post-Soviet, in the post-Soviet international theater. He was like just one in a million guys that were doing the same fucking thing. It's not super accurate to the story. I want to ask you something though, Dave. Did you know, according to my informal internet research, that supposedly this fall they will begin filming a sequel of Lord of War starring Bill Skarsgård as Nick Cage's son? And
what a weird project.
Movie.
It's wild. I don't know anything about what story is being told there. Like, is there a story with this character's son? Like,
I don't know. They might just fully depart from that. I didn't do any research into that. But enough time has passed. I mean, that this was based, I think, at the end of the movie, it's the mid to late 90s. And so if that guy had a son in that period of time, they do show him having a son in the movie. That would be an adult man by now. I mean, that would be a man in his 30s probably by now.
Hey, that's legacy.
Oh, one other little note on that movie, Dave. You remember my period of time where in my journalistic career, I had a couple of years where I worked in the area of international fraud, money laundering.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I don't think I've ever told you about this, but I actually got to know the real life guy who the Ethan Hawke character was based off of. Which that character was actually an amalgamation of a few different characters, but one major dude who was like this badass, kind of like gun runner chaser, and who that worked with through the State Department and all these different task forces. And I don't want to mention his name, but like he was a real guy. He told me a lot of the interesting inside stories of where the truth was actually a lot stranger than the fiction in that movie.
I bet. I would not be surprised to hear that. And yeah, I got to revisit that before this weird sequel comes out, because it's great, but I haven't seen it since.
And you're not going to miss
so.
a Nick Cage movie.
Oh yeah, of course. Not a chance.
What do you got next, Dave?
I'm going to pivot to TV for a second for my next puzzle piece.
All right, good. I'm glad I'm not the one that had to break break format, because I'm about to.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, nice. I'm going with Better Call Saul. Because of how the big idea to fix everything when it seems like all hope is lost is to make a commercial and, just get all the favors in from all the buddies in the neighborhood. And there also happens to be drug dealers and gangsters involved in making that. And it's just all about advertising to the community. And that is what Saul did, and what he did so great, and how he ended up building his business up in Better Call Saul, and makes advertising into such a fun montage of a sequence.
Yeah, I mean, this is, dear listener, the one thing you don't know about your host, David Rosen, is his eternal cynicism born out of a life of trying to get people to pay attention to things. Yes. And it has infected every iota of his being. Every project that he that he vets, or like,
everybody check out the Pup Pups out.
Check out the Pup Pups album. Good plug. I could tell you, Dave, tomorrow I could tell Dave I have been gifted the intellectual property rights to the 1964 character made by Stan Lee, Spider-Man. I've been given the exclusive rights to Spider-Man. And I have ideas, Dave. Here's my business plan of what we can do with this intellectual property. And Dave's rejoinder would be, but who's going to watch it? Who's going to care? Nobody wants to see it. And it doesn't matter what it is. So, like, yes, I would imagine that a scene like in this movie in Flamin' Hot, where the character harnesses the community power to advertise and market his project, would fall on pretty deaf ears, or maybe incredibly meaty, squishy ears of Dave. I definitely think that you probably kind of perked up a little bit when you saw that scene. Like, that's bullshit. Nobody would do that. Nobody would care about those chips. Nobody would download those chips.
It's a work of fiction, and it's really fun. So, what do you got for your next piece?
Dave, speaking of the concept of intellectual property, what's your feeling about your guests playing little live hunks of audio, like on your show?
Will it come through? I don't even know.
It'll come through. Watch this. So my next puzzle piece is from The Wire, season 1, episode 2. The title of the episode is called The Detail. This was first aired in 2002, directed by Clark Johnson, written by David Simon and Ed Burns. And in the scene, you're gonna see the specific scene I want to point out is there's a huge cast of characters in The Wire, but this one specifically is with Lawrence Gilliard Jr., J.D. Williams as the iconic Bodie Broaddus, a well-known character, well loved by this huge fandom of this show. Trey Chaney as Poot, and a baby-faced Michael B. Jordan as Wallace. So this scene that I'm going to show you is the famed chicken nugget scene, which was kind of a coming out moment for what turned out to be one of the best, in my opinion, the best TV show of all time. So I'm going to show you this right now.
Man, these shits is right, yo. Good with the hot sauce too, though.
Most definitely.
Yo, Jay, you want some nuggets?
Nah, go ahead, man.
Man, whoever invented these, he off the hook.
What?
Motherfucker got the bone all the way out the damn chicken. Till he came along, niggas been chewing on drumsticks and shit, getting their fingers all greasy. He said, later for the bone. Let's nugget that meat up and make some real money.
Nugget that meat up.
You think the man got paid?
Oh.
Man, who invented these?
Shit, he richer than a motherfucker.
Why? You think you get a percentage?
Why not?
Nigga, please. The man who invented them things, just some sad ass down at the basement of McDonald's. Thinking of some shit to make some money for the real players. Nah, man, that ain't right. Fuck right. It ain't about right. It's about money. Now, you think Ronald McDonald gonna go down that basement and say, hey, Mr. Nugget, you the bomb. We selling chicken faster than you can tear the bone out. So I'm gonna write my clowny ass name on this fat ass check for you. Shit. And the nigga who invented them things, still working in the basement for regular wage, thinking of some shit to make the fries taste better, some shit like that. Believe.
Still have the idea though.
And
One
the
of my
Ronald
favorite-
McDonald of Frito-Lay did go down and use the idea, so kind of worked out here in Flamin' Hot.
All-time favorite scene from The Wire. One of the like top 5. The way
awesome.
that these kids from the bottom rung of capitalism, the way that they can look upwards and be such keen observers
Sure.
of the way
Yeah.
that the world is, and they are not, you know, the Gilliard character there is, D'Angelo Barksdale, and he's like the elder statesman at the ripe old age of like 18 in that scene, and
Sure.
these are like, early teenagers that he's talking to, and the way that they haven't been fully disabused yet of like exactly how fucked up this system is. That and again in later seasons they come to use this phrase that becomes very famous with The Wire: the game is rigged.
Mhm.
The only way to win is not to play. And the way that it's rigged against them, against people like Richard Montanez, broadly the way that it's rigged against working people, lower class people, and the understanding of that and seeing that. I think it's something that Flamin' Hot dances around and doesn't address directly. But I was really I was reminded of this scene when I was watching that movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's there in every scene of the movie. It's just they don't explicitly go into it because, they want to keep things light and fun and
Right.
feel good and whatnot. But yeah, no, that's a great scene and definitely fits really well here.
Isn't it so fun to see like a young Michael B. Jordan?
I
Like,
know.
little baby Michael
That's
B.
him.
Jordan.
That's wild.
What do you got?
Well, I will go. So to the point of this being a like a feel good crowd pleaser, the Frito-Lay factory, and all its hierarchies and strict rules. We also get Matt Walsh of UCB here, which me and Q used to watch constantly back in the day. But
Always smile when he shows up in something.
I know he's great. But it feels like a prison almost, the way that the whole structure of the whole place is. And if it was a prison, Clarence, this older black dude who knows the ins and outs of everything, he's the smartest guy there, but he's been stuck there forever. And he takes this new guy under his wing and imparts all this wisdom on him. A lot like Shawshank Redemption and Morgan
Okay.
Freeman's character.
The
so that
magical
is my
black
puzzle
character.
piece.
Yeah, the magical black character.
Yeah, I mean he's such a cool dude though, and he really like kind of shows Richard the way. So he's totally in that kind of character arc.
Yeah, and then in many ways, Richard surpasses him, which again, Richard is supposed to be the analog for our story. The only different, the sort of like the stand-in for the audience in the story. So, I love how they just kind of like gloss over the fact that it's like at one point it's like 1990. And they're like, oh, he can't be the boss because he's black. And it's like, what the fuck? Wait, what? Like, this guy literally can't get promoted because he's a black guy in 1990? I mean, I know America is like an intrinsically racist, like deeply, systemically racist place. But like, I feel like there were bosses that were black in the 90s that were like
Maybe a few.
like chief diversity officer or something. I mean, like, fuck, let him be in charge of operations or whatever. But like, that's yeah. I was a little taken aback by that. Although I don't doubt that is probably a true part of the story.
Yeah, most likely. So you said you got one more piece?
I do, Dave, and I'm jumping all over media because I just went from movies to television in my last one. Now I'm going to literature, and I'm going to invoke for my next puzzle piece, probably the most accurate and the actual real puzzle piece, the real genesis of a movie like this and all media like this, which is the collected works of late 19th century American young adult author Horatio Alger. All of Horatio Alger's books, most famously known, if you ever did get like subjected to any Horatio Alger, because it's not good. If you ever got sort of like subjected to any of it, you know the again when we were like in like 7th grade, we would laugh at this, but the book Ragged Dick was his most famous one.
Right.
Strive and Succeed, Tattered Tom, Luck and Pluck. These are sort of like penny pulpy novels from the, from like his time frame was like the 1860s to the 1890s. The last 20 years of his career were really bad. Like he just got very iterative and just kept writing the same story over and over. But this is where we get like our understanding of like Newsies and understanding of like interestingly, no movies have ever been adapted from any Horatio Alger books.
Oh,
and he
weird.
wrote over 100 novels, which is not that weird because they're bad. They're really bad.
Okay.
And the only way to really do a good adaptation, especially now in like in the 21st century, would be to subvert them and do like a spin on them. That's like, because what these books was propaganda. These books were really, and I hate to say that about Flamin' Hot, but it is a type of propaganda and capitalism apologia, where it's saying like, oh, you bust your ass hard enough and you can go from being the newsboy standing in front of the, selling the newspapers with your like soot on your face, to one day owning the newspaper, right? And it was made, all this stuff was being pushed with this pro-capitalist message, and not coincidentally at the rise of the American robber baron, the Fords and the Rockefellers. This was meant to like kind of obscure what we can all see, what the kids in that episode of The Wire saw very clearly, which is that the game's rigged. You're fucked if you're on the lower end of this, and that the only way out is to come together as a community, come together with each other. This whole genre of Horatio Alger type of novels was saying, no. What matters is you, the individual. You're the person that can pull yourself out by your bootstraps, out of your circumstances. And it came
Those
also.
books are probably really popular right now.
Incredible.
With a lot of people.
They would probably be. Well, what kind of subverted it is that if you read them now, they're kind of dumb. And
Right.
they're missing an element of like sort of philosophical engagement that was filled about 50 years afterwards by Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand books became the sort of natural outgrowth of that, which were for grown-ups. They're for grown-ups. These books were for kids to like be like, yeah, my life fucking sucks, but look at this. Look at Ragged Dick. Ragged Dick figured his life out. And if he could do it, anyone can do it. And it also, not coincidentally, came at the time right at the advent of going back to this topic, the rise of the labor union, the rise of organized labor, the rise of solidarity, and when these books were written, there was no such thing as a weekend. We didn't have a weekend, and unions got that for us. There wasn't such thing as vacation time. Unions got that for us, and very conveniently elided in the movie that we're talking about. By the way, Horatio Alger was a man who was like sadly closeted his whole life, but was also a pedophile. So like. That bears some mentioning too. Don't read Horatio Alger stuff. It's trash. It's at the core. It's at the heart of the project of what this movie is about, which is big corporations telling us that we can make it too if we just strive hard enough, work hard enough, and sacrifice enough, and like trying to obscure us with these really feel good tales, obscure the reality that like, man, this poor guy, all he had to do was create $10 billion of revenue to get a director position, upper middle level management position. All he had to do was fucking literally make more money than God for this company.
Yeah.
Speaking
of God, you also have to find God in the process. That way, that gives you a little leg up. So I could have gone without that.
That's interesting. Let's talk about that. I want to unpack that in a second before we get to. I guess you have probably one more puzzle piece.
Sure.
Yeah. I want to unpack that piece because I kind of just eschewed that and threw that to the side. The whole religious angle. Did you? Okay, I maybe was giving it too much credit or too much grace. Where the way that I absorbed that movie, that whole part of the movie, is that Richard Montanez ultimately forgave his father, in spite of his father's use of religion as a crutch. Because I never felt like Richard actually became some like Bible thumper, like his dad had become following his abusive youth, or as a younger man. And I feel like what the message was supposed to be was that, in spite of this guy's flaws and his, religiosity, religion was something that he had to kind of step away from and move away from in order to come together with his son. But maybe I misread that. This movie was a really weird duality, man, where I wasn't always sure what they were trying to say. Religion is good or it's bad. This guy's using it as a crutch, or he's actually right. Richard needs to come to him to, see the light of the God.
And I saw it in a totally different way, actually, because I saw it more as strengthening his connection with his wife, because his wife felt that it was so important to have that spirituality, and like she's obviously like his partner and everything, and like that's another thing that we.
Maybe I misread it because I thought it was the wife trying to keep his dad in his life. I thought it was like
interesting
because like the line that I thought was very profound when she told the dad, why don't you stop pretending? I'm paraphrasing again, but it was basically like, why don't you stop pretending that you're a changed man and a different man? Why don't you come back to his life when you've actually changed and when you're ready to be his dad? And because he was still a prick through the whole adult Richard scenes where adult Richard, was no longer being smacked around by his dad, who had found God after, a tumultuous early life. Right. And so it took like, I almost feel like the movie, I was giving it credit for saying like, oh, this guy found God, but he's still the same asshole until he really changed. And, but again, maybe I was giving it too much credit.
Yeah, I like giving the movie credit. I think it's nice. But you know what? Your Horatio Alger book, Puzzle Piece, is a good setup for my next one, because I feel like it kind of fits with the same vibe. The Will Smith movie, The Pursuit of Happiness.
Oh, perfect. Yes. Dave, you completely absorbed what Horatio Alger is about. Pursuit of Happiness is exactly like modern day Horatio Alger capitalism apologia. Yes. Yeah,
exactly. If you just work hard, get that internship unpaid, and get shit on for many, many years, you will eventually have an okay life, or maybe even make it to the top.
Dave, you brought up the idea, the Matt Walsh character in this. Same thing in Pursuit of Happiness, and same thing in Alger. Alger was very well known for and critiqued for creating these stock characters that he would just pull out and change their names and change some of the details about them. But there was the racist, the hater, the guy who was like, the middle manager that wouldn't let you go above, right? And that's the same thing Pursuit of Happiness does. And that shit is sinister, because what it does is it turns the strictures, the screws of our system that keep us down, it turns them into these discrete individuals. Oh, it's
bosses.
It's some bosses, some asshole's fault that, that Will Smith's character kept getting, shit on through that whole movie. It's a bunch of, it's not a systemic thing. Oh, no. The system's fine. You just got to find your place in it. And don't let yourself be dragged down by all these jerks, these individual jerks that are trying to keep you from becoming yourself. You just come up with $1 billion idea, or in the case of that guy, $1 billion fucking scam of like, what was that guy's thing? He was like the Black Tony Robbins, right? Like come up with your own hustle, and but we never address the actual systemic reason why you were born into this situation, or why it perpetuates, generation after generation. That's a great pull, man.
Right on. Well, we'll close out the puzzle pieces with that one, and let's do the finished puzzle, and then we'll get into some closing comments. We talked about Norma Rae, The Founder, Joy, Chef, Lord of War, Better Call Saul, The Wire, The Shawshank Redemption, Horatio Alger books, and The Pursuit of Happiness. I'll throw in there as a little bonus, we do get those scenes where Richard is telling the story of what other people are saying, and we're seeing the other people acting while he's telling the story, very much like Michael Pena in the Ant-Man movies, which, where was Michael Pena in Ant-Man 3? Come on, man.
Where was Michael Pena in this movie? Hasn't he been in all of Eva Longoria's movies?
I think so, but I'm not sure about that. So, but he's great though. So
he was in Chavez, which was not an Eva Longoria movie, but Cesar Chavez was a great example of what we're talking about. Like that was a more, I don't know if it was an independent movie, but it sure felt like an indie. And like they didn't. There's such a long, rich, fruitful history for the last 150 years of Mexican labor struggles, right? Mm-hmm. Going back to Cesar Chavez, even before. And that never even was invoked, that this character didn't have like some moment of awakening when he was doing all this learning about how business works and how to do a pitch and how to, educating himself, trying to gentrify himself, basically make himself fit for the gentry, make himself assimilate, that he never came across the story of another Mexican man and this enormous struggle that he led, and it's like it's almost conspicuous by its absence, that all of it, and it's like it just makes you think, if you're a 43-year-old man that has like a little bit of knowledge of this stuff, or 43-year-old person who's learned about it, it makes you think like, why are you guys talking about that? Oh yeah, right. It's Disney. Like, you're not gonna talk about the importance of organizing labor and shit like that.
Yeah, there's a certain lens you have to watch a movie like this through, or else it just all falls apart. But obviously, we were both able to watch it through that lens because we both had a good time with it.
I really enjoyed it. My daughter loved it. It spurred a lot of fun conversations. We did the thing that, when you have a little kid, that you do a lot with in movies that you watch at home, which is great, which is you pause and talk about things. And that's how it's a really good movie, when you have to pause it a few times and like talk about like, oh yeah, well, why do you think you did that? What would you have done there? Would you have, would you have been mad? Like, and it was funny the way that they sort of portrayed this like real casual racism, like where the woman in the food stamp office is like, why'd you have another kid? It's just like, it's really kind of fucked up, but we really enjoyed it. And my critiques are all from like a fucking egg-headed place, like they're all from a place of like academia or whatever. Like, it was a good movie. Well, Dave, can we rank right now the 2023 product movies? Can I get your take?
Can.
Have you done a take? I haven't listened. I haven't heard you make a take on this trend yet. Do you have a take about the product movie trend?
I don't know what to make of it, why this has happened, and like really there's the main four, but there were others too. There was a pinball movie, which I haven't seen. It kind of went under the radar, and I think that there's that Pop-Tarts movie coming, and like
Gran Turismo's coming out.
Gran Turismo kind of fits the bill as well. Like it's a really weird moment.
The Blackberry
we're going through.
Movie, Barbie.
Yeah, well, I guess Barbie I guess would fit, but Blackberry definitely.
Yeah, Barbie's not about the actual product. Although the more scenes that we're seeing in the trailers now, I think that it actually might end up being about the product.
It might.
They pulled back in the more recent trailers a little bit of the, like, we don't stay in that in the movie. I guess the big question was always like, oh, is it a dream? Is it something?
Right.
But and now we see that it's like at least part of the movie occurs in the real world, and
where
Barbie is an iconic Mattel product.
It's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, the main four though are Flamin' Hot, Air, Blackberry, and Tetris. Those are the ones that we're all talking about here. And I actually now that we've recorded this, I've covered all four of them on the podcast. And I can't.
Wait, you don't count Mario?
Man, Mario's a big dumb
that's
adventure.
Just IP, right?
It's just IP, but it's fun though. But I can't separate my nostalgia from Tetris. It is my favorite of the four. It's just such a fun movie, and the nostalgia factor just absolutely kills me. But Blackberry otherwise would be the top of the list. Blackberry is surprisingly fantastic. Glenn Howerton is so good in that movie, and Air is great. Air comes right in just below it, and then this would be at the bottom. But like we've said, I still liked it a lot.
How about this trend, the output in terms of movies and TV shows or whatever of this trend right now versus last year's bad tech founder trend, where it was like everything was about some shithead that founded some horrible company that fucked people over and was like built up to be a god and turned out to be a complete asshole or whatever.
Well, that's funny because to me last year was celebrated filmmakers focusing in on their childhoods and the love and power of cinema. Like that was the big thing last year. But yeah, I don't know. These things, they go in waves. I mean, remember we had two, giant impact asteroid movies in one year. We had like these
volcano
things happen.
Movies. Remember the two volcano movies that came out? Or there was like two or three.
It's weird when these things happen. It just happens sometimes. But yeah, I don't know. This was a surprisingly good run of these true product stories, and I don't know that I want more of them at this point. But the fact that all four of them were good is pretty wild.
The best thing I've seen from this collection of movies that we're talking about right now is the scene. And again, this was where, and I'll say it again. Eva Longoria goes right up to the edge of this commentary without actually making it. And it was the scene between Dolores Jordan on the phone with Matt Damon's Sonny Vaccaro in Air, where she asks for a percentage of the for on behalf of her son Michael Jordan. Viola Davis, right? That was Viola Davis?
Yeah.
And where Viola Davis's character Dolores Jordan asks on behalf of her son, she's really running the business for him, a percentage for all future Jordan apparel that gets sold. And from the perspective of 2023, we realize what a huge ask that is. We're like, oh my God, you're asking for $10 billion, basically. And like, and there's this waffling, there's this back and forth, and then at one point the two characters, it's a very well written scene where they drop the pretenses, specifically Sonny Vaccaro, Matt Damon's character, drops the pretenses and says, look, they're never going to let working people like us have this. You have to understand and like know your place. And Dolores Jordan, makes a great point where she says, well, every once in a while somebody comes along who has who's exceptional and can change those things. And I felt like there was room in this movie for Richard Montanez to be that guy, this exceptional guy who has a deep, abiding love and understanding of his community, and also 1 foot in the corporate arena as like somebody who can realize that understanding and make it happen on a corporate level so that his community is less marginalized by corporate America, his fellow workers who we never see again, right? A lot of those people, when he gets handed the keys to his office, they're not there, right? They're not with him. They're not alongside of him. Those guys in the yard in the first act that are like, his buddies who are helping him get the job at Frito-Lay, we don't see them ever again, right?
Yeah.
Whereas today, John Morant comes into the league, into the NBA, and it's standard fare for him to say, oh no, if you're going to put out a John Morant sneaker, I better be getting a percentage. If you're going to put out a Tracy McGrady sneaker, you're going to be putting out a Kyrie Irving sneaker. All those guys, it's very rational. Thanks to Michael Jordan, the one exceptional guy, it's rational and it's standard practice, forget about rational, for them to ask for a percentage. Now, what happens to the brilliant ideas today that come out of Frito-Lay, PepsiCo, that come from the working ranks? I mean, do they get just kind of like digested and turned into propaganda like this? Or do they change things for not just the guy who came up with the idea, but everybody who comes subsequent to him? I don't know. I think that's an open question.
Yeah, no, it's definitely an interesting point, and it's hard to say also like where these kind of stories, like, do these kind of stories still happen at all, like in the world that we're in right now?
Yeah, or is corporate America so bloodless at this point that they that they just get regurgitated as press releases or something like that?
Well, Q, is there another movie you watched recently you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
I mentioned it at the beginning, but like I have a little indie flick that nobody's seen. I think it's called Across the Spider-Verse. No, but I just want to say there's a lot of stuff I've been watching lately, but I went to the movie theater yesterday and I saw Across the Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse with my kid, because a lot of my daytime viewing is all kid oriented. And maybe I'm overstating it, but this is the best piece of intellectual property that's come out from Marvel or DC ever.
Yeah.
It's better than Spider-Man 2 back in 2000. It's better than I don't know what is the other like prestige Logan, like Old Man Logan or whatever. What was it? Was it just called Logan?
It was just called Logan. Yeah.
Yeah. The comic book was called Old Man Logan, which I remember. I don't know whatever your favorite is. If you're like some of our frequent co-hosts, Batman versus Superman fan, whatever. I don't care. Whatever your favorite thing is, this is better. This is a profoundly incredible movie. I know I'm not breaking news by saying that, but like, wow, what a fucking film. What a movie. And I'm still thinking about it. I saw it at this point about 24 hours ago, and I'm still thinking about it. So
yeah, no, it's great. Great recommendation, although I'm sure everybody has seen it already, but definitely go see it if you haven't, for sure. Yeah. Q, what is going on with Why Are We Like This right now?
Why Are We Like This? The most recent episode, Why Are We Like This? The true crime podcast that treats Florida like the active crime scene it is, where we explore why Florida is the way that it is. Our most recent episode is very Miami focused. If you're a film fan, you're going to like it because our guest is frequent guest and collaborator Billy Corbin, whose name you might know as the director of Cocaine Cowboys, the director of no shortage of Hulu and HBO documentaries, series, a lot of stuff. The U, if you're a sports fan, he did the U and the U Part 2. One of America's foremost documentarians. And Billy and I and Tomas Kennedy, my co-host, and Gerald Doherty, my other co-host, we talk about a lot of recent fuckery down here in the city of Miami and corruption and a $63 million judgment levied against a civil judgment levied against one of our city commissioners down here for intentionally undercutting people's businesses and out of political retribution and revenge, and a lot of sordid, dirty shit. So check that out and subscribe to us while you're at it.
Awesome. Q, it's been too long since you've been on the show. I'm happy to have you back. Thanks again for doing it.
Of course. I love you.
Do you love rom-coms? Do you wish you could talk about Christmas movies year-round? Then we have the perfect podcast for you, Hallmarkies Podcast. Throughout the year, we cover all things romance, holiday, and Hallmark, including recaps of every Hallmark show, like When Calls the Heart and The Way Home. You can also get loads of bonus content covering shows like Bridgerton, Sweet Magnolias, and Just Like That. We are an all-female group of friends who are passionate for these shows and movies and give our honest opinions as well as gush over what we love so much. But that's not all. Every Monday, there are interviews with all your favorite actors, writers, directors, and more. Check out Hallmarkies Podcast on all your podcast providers and on YouTube. That's Hallmarkies Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Q about Flamin' Hot. Thanks to everyone out there for listening. And if you enjoy the show, make sure you are subscribed wherever it is that you're listening right now. Hit that subscribe or that follow button, or I don't know, maybe it's a little plus sign or something. Whatever it is, hit that button and maybe drop a 5-star rating and review. I'd really appreciate it if you did that. You could also follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. Join the Facebook group Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces. And we do have a Patreon, the Produced by David Rosen Patreon, where I post bonus and advanced content from Piecing It Together, Awesome Movie Year, and from my music career. I've got a lot of stuff on the way there now that we just got through these live shows and got the Pup Pups album ready and all this other stuff that I've been working on. Now it's time to prep some extra bonus content for the Patreon, so it's a great time to sign up. There's going to be a lot of extra stuff on there in the coming weeks. So again, it's patreon.com/by David Rosen. That's the Produced by David Rosen Patreon, and I do appreciate your support. And speaking of my music, let's close this out with a piece of music like I always do. And I'm going to go with something called How to Start a Fire from my most recent album, More Content, because fire and Flamin' Hot kind of goes together. So yeah, let's play How to Start a Fire. Again, this is from my most recent album, More Content. Hope you enjoy it. We'll be back with more Piecing It Together real soon.
an All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.